Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a global geopolitical update. It's like your daily news fix if you've had your head buried in the sand all day, and I hope you have had your head buried in the sand, so I'm not just repeating what you already know, but you'll get my own added layer of analysis over the top as well. We're obviously going to be talking a lot about Donald Trump. It'll be a very nice timeline to exist in when we didn't have to consistently analyze what Trump is saying and doing. Unfortunately, he seems to be the central node of all that is happening in the world, or much of what is happening in the world at the moment, and not a lot of it is good. And so we have to talk about him. And today he has been, or over the last 24, 36 hours, he has been calling for allies, as he would see it, to come to his aid in reopening the Straits of Hormuz, while at the same time having just denigrated those same countries for not doing X, Y, or Z, or having started trade wars with them, or in one case threatened to invade them, or two cases actually, you could say Canada, but also Denmark, Greenland, and so expecting these countries to then come to the aid of Trump's plans and war project is kind of bizarre. So a quick synopsis of the day so far. Trump said he will soon announce countries that have agreed to help the US reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So although there's a number of countries that have very clearly and publicly denied that they're going to help Trump, certainly in the way that he wants, I don't know if there are some countries that are going to help Trump, or there are some countries who had said they would give limited assistance, such as, I don't know, with mine hunting drones or something, and he's going to cobble together some kind of suite of those kind of offers and publicize them. Meanwhile, though, allies have responded by saying that this is not a NATO war. So he keeps invoking NATO, but NATO is a defensive arrangement. It's not an offensive arrangement. So claiming, talking about NATO really is not right. It makes little sense here, because this is an offensive war that he has taken himself and his country into, at the behest, arguably, of Bibi Netanyahu, and to invoke NATO is actually nonsensical. So allies have responded by saying this is not a NATO war, with the EU insisting it has no appetite to expand its naval mission to the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has also said the war would be wrapped up soon. I think Chris Wright said another couple of weeks at least. So possibly not as quick as they were hoping. But he said it wouldn't be this week, but it won't be long. US Vice President J.D. Vance has deflected when questioned about his previous very cool opinions on foreign interventionist wars. He was asked about this and then deflected and attacked the media for asking such questions. When he was asked if he supports a war, or Trump's war on Iran, he was typically evasive, or predictably evasive, I should say. Iran's foreign minister has denied recent contact with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who himself has been accused of trying desperately to do deals with Iran by text message. So that's been going on. Leaders of UK, France, Germany, Canada, and Italy issued a joint statement expressing grave concern after Israel launched a ground invasion of Lebanon. So there's a kind of repudiation of, or at least an appeal, an imploring of Israel not to do a ground war into Lebanon. And the IDF has said that its troops have begun what it described as a limited and targeted set of ground operations into Lebanon to clear out Hezbollah there. And Hezbollah are a proxy, an Iranian proxy group, so it's all connected to Iran. And yeah, that's after news that apparently 850 people have been killed in Lebanon, including 107 children. More than 1 million have been displaced. So that's been happening. There have been explosions in Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone, which is where the US embassy, I think, is located. And then there are the fires going on in places like the UAE, Dubai, I think, other such places. So, there's an awful lot going on at the moment all over the shop. Okay, right. Before we then look into more detail on certain elements of this, thank you very much for all being here. Really appreciate that. It's a late night one for me. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I have to purge myself of all of these 8 gazillion tabs and everything that's in my mind. Before we get to the finer details, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate those who have, of course, already done so. Legends one and all. Okay, let's go and look at some details then. Now, I'm on my own at the moment. I might be joined by Benny Pie, who might be able to look at a few comments of yours to sort of curate them for me. Right, let's just go back to the beginning of today. So Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, I was very nervous that he might agree to go all in with the US. I was thinking there might be an inordinate amount of pressure on the UK from Trump because we sit outside of the EU and it's easier to pressure us than any European nation who can stick together more easily. So I thought we might be picked off, but I was happy that really happy that Keir Starmer came out and said exactly what I was wanting him to say, such as we will not be drawn into a wider war. I want to see this an end to this war as quickly as possible. The longer it goes on, the more dangerous the situation becomes and the worse it is for the cost of living back home. We are going to need time to sort out a negotiated agreement. Ultimately, we have to open the Strait of Hormuz. That is not a simple task. We are working with all of our allies, including our European partners, to bring together a viable collection plan that can restore freedom and navigation in the region as quickly as possible. It's vital we continue to focus on supporting Ukraine. So this is really important. He then pivoted back to saying, don't forget Ukraine. That's the most important thing. And in fact, we've heard this from the EU as well, I think, today, or from Vadeful, the German foreign minister. So that's really good to hear that people are saying, look, let's not be totally distracted by what's going on in Iran. From a European point of view, Ukraine is our major concern. We cannot allow the war in the Gulf to turn into a windfall for Putin. Absolutely spot on there. So that was good news. And to be honest, I would expect, because there's a dilemma going on here, which is everyone needs the Strait of Hormuz to be open. We really want it to be open because global trade is being screwed over. It's going to be inflationary for everyone. That's going to cause political upheaval, economic upheaval, and really it's going to cost people, and those on the breadline are going to be hit the worst. So this is not cool. We need to stop this, and Keir Starmer, as well as any other leader in Europe, is going to be very, very aware of this, and will be trying very hard to solve this problem without committing naval ships and resources that look like open warfare to the American war project. And that's a very difficult line to navigate, I think. But I think that's what you're going to see, which is a willingness to solve the problem without going all in to solve the problem. Okay, so that was Keir Starmer. Malcolm Rifkind, interesting, the former British, he came and gave the Leavers speech at my school. Malcolm Rifkind is former Conservative minister, former defence minister, actually back under, is it all the way back under Thatcher? I think he was. Anyway, Malcolm Rifkind said that he said he was interviewed by Trevor Phillips, saying he's wrong about our preparedness. So the criticism that some people in the media, like Trevor Phillips, are presenting about the British is that we weren't prepared for this kind of war in Iran. Why did it take us this long amount of time to get our HMS Dragon ready and all this kind of stuff? But the point is that we weren't consulted about this being a war. So why should we be prepared all of a sudden? Why should we have readiness of ships like within 0 days readiness if we had nothing, we weren't included in the planning for this war? And it's a bit unrealistic. So it's interesting that a Conservative says, I don't know what you expect us to be prepared for when it's a war we didn't start and we weren't informed about. So well done, Malcolm Rifkind, for saying the right thing there. I think that's absolutely spot on. This wasn't our war. Like, why should we be prepared for a war that someone else is waging? Right. So then we're going to get on to a bit of Trump talking about Keir Starmer and his reaction particularly. And I think this is because, like he said, he's given Emmanuel Macron an 8 out of 10. He says it's France, so it's what you expect. It's kind of, I'm paraphrasing, but he is like, I give him an 8 out of 10. So, but the French have actually, they're not committing anything. So I don't know why the French are getting a bit more love than the British here. But anyway, we're in the crosshairs. But this is quite an extraordinary thing for him to say.
Have your advisors told you anything in terms of how long we can expect gas prices as high as they are right now?
I don't need advisors to tell me that. I know what it is. You know, the Prime Minister of UK, United Kingdom, yesterday told me I'm meeting with my team to make a determination. I said, you don't need to meet it with the team. You're the Prime Minister. You can make.
This is absolutely unbelievable. So he starts off by saying, I don't need advisors to tell me X, Y, Z. I keep talking about how this guy's a dictator wannabe, and he's taking the country in an autocratic direction. And he clearly wants to be a dictator. And he clearly is acting like he is a dictator. So when he says, I don't need advisors, that's shorthand for I see myself as a dictator. I don't need to answer to anyone. If I want to make a decision, I bloody well will. And in fact, we're gonna return to this idea a little bit later, because we're starting to understand how the US went to war, and it appears to be that Trump really wanted to do it. And despite what Dan Kane and others were saying, he's like, no, I feel it in my bones. We're gonna do it. And that's a dictator. And he is denigrating the prime minister of a country, of the UK, for wanting to go and consult with his cabinet, with his team, like as if that he's just going to phone up Keir Starmer and say, "Are you going to come to war with us?" And Keir Starmer's going to go, "Yeah, all right then. Yeah, sounds like it's all shits and giggles, isn't it? Brilliant. Let's have a laugh." No, he's going to say, "I need to talk to some people." Maybe some lawyers. The idea that he's denigrating a leader of another country for wanting to speak to a team of people, or the cabinet, or to advisors when considering going to war, it's just absolutely outrageous.
Your advisors told you anything in terms of how long we can expect gas prices as high as they are right now?
I don't need advisors to tell me that. I know what it is. You know, the Prime Minister of UK, United Kingdom, yesterday told me I'm meeting with my team to make a determination. I said, you don't need to meet it with the team. You're the Prime Minister. You can make your own. Why do you have to meet with your team to find out whether or not you're going to send some minesweepers to us or to send some boats? I said, you don't have to meet with your team. It's the same thing here.
It's the same thing here. I don't have to meet with my team. I get to decide what happens with the country going to war on my own. I don't have to ask Congress. This is an unconstitutional war. I don't need to ask Congress. He's essentially telling the American public, I am a king. I am an emperor. I am a dictator. Here it is.
Tell you that when this is over, oil prices are going to go down very, very rapidly. So is inflation. So is everything else. But
have your advisors told you?
So there you go. That's one of his bonkers things that he said today, and there are lots. Here he is speaking a little bit more at a bit more length about what the UK has done, and I guess others.
Kingdom, because the United Kingdom, 2 weeks ago, I said, why don't you send some ships over? And he really didn't want to do it. I said, you don't want to do it. We've been with you. You're our oldest ally. And we spend a lot of money on, NATO and all of.
Please stop saying this, Trump. You don't spend a lot of money on NATO. The fact that he keeps saying this, the fact that he doesn't understand how NATO works still is absolutely outrageous. Like, someone needs to go and slap him around the face with a wet fish. like multiple times. Just slap, slap. What are you doing? Slap, slap. What are you saying? Why do you keep saying this? Susie Wiles just needs to get out a frying pan and bonging around the head. Just say, what are you on about again? We're not paying all this money for NATO. We spend that money on our defense. It's not for NATO. We're not buying NATO stuff. We're buying our stuff. We're supporting our military industrial complex. That's part of our economic strategy and has been for decades. Is we have huge economic expenditure from a government point of view, $1 trillion almost this year on defense. That props up our economy. We then export our security and we export our defense infrastructure to NATO forces by saying, well, we need interoperability. I'll tell you what's a good rocket system, a HIMARS. I think you should all buy that. And so everyone buys HIMARS and Patriots and blah, blah, blah. So we all exist in the American military ecosystem, and NATO allows that. But, he's not paying for NATO. He's paying for his own defense, that if NATO Article 5 is invoked, the US is, like any nation who's spending enough on their defense, is in a healthy place to be able to react to Article 5. The fact that as President of the United States, he still doesn't understand that is remarkable.
I said, you don't want to do it. We've been with you. You're our oldest ally. And we spend a lot of money on, NATO and all of these things to protect you. I mean, we're protecting them. We're working with them on Ukraine. Ukraine's thousands of miles away, separated by a vast ocean. We don't have to do that, but we did it. Well, Biden did it. I mean, I have to be honest with you. Biden got taken to the cleaners.
So now he's saying quite openly, I don't want to help Ukraine. That's what he's saying. He said, we went to help Ukraine. We didn't have to, but we did it. Actually, we didn't. Oh, it was Biden what did it. And he got taken to the cleaners. So he's now openly showing disdain for helping Ukraine. He doesn't want to help Ukraine. This is obvious. He's telling you here that he doesn't want to help Ukraine.
But we worked with them in Ukraine. We don't need to work with them in Ukraine. And then they tell us that we have a mine ship around and they don't want to do it. I think it's terrible. No, I was very surprised. I told him, we requested 2 aircraft carriers, which they had, and he didn't really want to do it. And then right after the war essentially ended, meaning they were obliterated, he said, I would like to send the aircraft carriers. I said.
So he's saying the war's essentially ended, and he said that last week. So I don't know what they've been doing for the last week since he said that to Starmer previously.
I don't need them after the war is ended and won. I need it before the war. So I was very upset.
Well, it's won. Why are you still asking them for us for help? It's won. It's done. You've done it. Well done. I don't understand why you need our help.
Not upset. I was not happy with the UK. I think they'll be involved. Yeah, maybe. But they should be involved enthusiastically. We've been protecting these countries for years with NATO because NATO is us. You can ask Putin. Putin kingdom.
We're going to come back to that bit. So he basically says, we've been protecting these guys for ages because NATO is us. Now, from a cynical point of view, you could argue that to a large degree that the US military might is huge compared to all these other nations. But the idea that you can do things alone, I mean, it's shown by this war that you can't keep the Straits of Hormuz open. As the mightiest, $1 trillion a year on your armed forces, and you can't keep a 22-kilometer stretch of water open, and you're demanding help from others. So therefore, like this idea that you alone are protecting, that the US alone is NATO, I think is an insult to NATO. That's an insult to the help that the US forces had in Afghanistan. From all these other countries, what is it, 1,000 people dying from all the other NATO nations? I honestly, and this kind of, I was going to play this later, but I might play it now, actually. Here we have, is it Sir Richard Sheriff speaking with Christian Amanpour on, here it is, on CNN, and he kind of talks about this idea that the NATO, he can speak in his own words.
Trump, because the reality is that ever since he was inaugurated, NATO has pretty much been held below the waterline by America's clear statement from Vance and Hegseth last year that America would not underpin European security, and reinforced, of course, by Trump's actions in January when he threatened the territorial integrity of a NATO ally. So trust in America, in the alliance, has been broken. And, you have to think of the alliance as a family of member states, and trust is underpinning everything, like in any family. And when that's broken, it's really difficult to rebuild. So I'm not surprised that there is this real reluctance to dance to Trump's tune. And don't forget, of course, this is a war he started. This is not an alliance war, although all our interests are now involved as a result of his actions. Of course, Britain.
That trust has been broken, for sure. Going on. NATO is us. Putin is afraid of us. He's not afraid of Europe. He's afraid of the US. I would actually.
Here's with NATO, because NATO is us. You can ask Putin. Putin fears us. He doesn't fear. He has no fear of Europe whatsoever. He fears the United States of America and the military that was built by me in the first term. Yeah.
So he's saying Putin is afraid of the United States, but only because he's afraid of me. He's afraid of me for building up the military in my first term. Well, actually didn't do that in the significant way that he seems to keep claiming. But I actually don't think that's the case. I think they would be afraid of the United States, but at the moment they love a bit of Trump. He's manipulating. He's got you in his pocket. He's more afraid of Europe. That's why Peskov and the Kremlin is not wanting Europe to be at the negotiating table, because they know they will be negotiating on behalf of Ukraine, whereas the United States is negotiating on behalf of Russia. The Trump administration is in the pocket of the Kremlin. They're not afraid of you. They frickin' love you. They absolutely love you. I mean, they should be afraid of you, and they could be afraid of you, but right now, they ain't. So there you go. Scruffy, good to have you on board, my friend. If the US is this powerful, why does the US need help with Iran? And that is the point that keeps getting brought up. If you're spending $1 trillion on your armed forces each year, then you shouldn't need us. You keep saying that you've got the most magnificent armed forces, that you've won this war, that it's over, that it's this, that it's that you've done this, that it's they've been decimated. Game over, Iran. And then, oh, please help us. We need your help. We're demanding your help. So, yeah. Now, here we have Steve Doocy. Is it Steve Doocy or Peter Doocy? Anyway, the younger Doocy here speaking to Trump. Oh, no. Let's get that back.
Thank you. You were talking about Iran a couple times today and what they did after Epic Fury began. You said they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. Are you surprised that nobody briefed you ahead of time that might be there?
Okay, before we go to the answer, which is quite astonishing as an answer to this, he had earlier said that they were shocked that Iran would fight back. The level of planning incompetence around this, and I don't know quite who to blame about this. Like, is it Donald Trump's forthright or just gung-ho-ness that's like, I'm not listening to your advice here. I've just done Venezuela and it was an absolute success. We bombed Iran last year and I think that was an absolute success. It was easy. It was easy to bomb Iran's nukes last year or nuclear facilities or whatever. And we just absolutely slam dunked it with Venezuela as far as he sees it. So it's just going to be the same again. No, shut up, Dan. No, shut up, JD. Shut up, everyone. We're going to do this. Or were the people around him giving him bad advice that, oh no, Iran won't be able to do anything? I mean, there is a claim that Netanyahu was saying that once we decapitate them, once Khomeini's killed, they will be they'll be rolling over, ready to have their belly rubbed. You know, all sorts of different options here. But
Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, nobody expected that.
Nobody expected those countries to be attacked by Iran. So that wasn't war gamed.
Shocked. Are you
We were
surprised
shocked.
that nobody briefed you ahead of time that might be their retaliation?
Nobody, no.
Great question from Ducey there. Nobody briefed him on that. That's his claim here. Nobody briefed me that these countries could be attacked by Iran.
The greatest experts, nobody thought they were going to hit. They were, I wouldn't say friendly countries. They were like neutral. They lived with them for years. Peter, they were going to take over the Middle East. They were going to knock out Israel with their nuclear weapon. But after we knocked out their nuclear potential weapon, they started building missiles, thousands and thousands of missiles.
They didn't start building missiles last year. They built thousands of missiles in 1 year, less than a year. Like, what are you talking about?
And they were going to do it with missiles while they developed. These are sick people. While they developed nuclear, somehow they were going to start at a different site because that site was...
Oh, so now it's all annihilated, but they were still doing it. Now I've got to come up. Oh, now they're doing it at a different site. Cobbled together some kind of narrative here. And meanwhile, they've started building all these missiles and they were going to take over the Middle East. Iran weren't going to take over that. What are you talking about?
You saw the site, the mountain. They were going to go into a certain area, which we know exactly where it is. And they were going to do that. And it's incredible what we've done. I tell you, the job we've done. Do you know, if I didn't chime...
No, I don't know, and I don't want to know. So he doesn't seem to be making a lot of sense on the one hand. And on the other hand, there's an absolute lack of foresight, a real fundamental lack of foresight. And again, who is to blame there? Is that a Trump problem, or is that an administration problem, or is that a Benjamin Netanyahu being able to hoodwink Trump, or Netanyahu not even wargaming things well enough? Now, CNN have done a 42-second supercut here of all of the contradictions Trump has made today, just in that one press conference.
If we ever needed help, they won't be there for us. I've just known that for a long period of time. We have some that are really enthusiastic. They're coming already. This isn't need. Need would be one of the big boys. If we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of a situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us. We want them to come and help us with the Strait. My attitude is, we don't need anybody. We're the strongest nation in the world. We have the strongest military by far in the world. We don't need them.
Did you follow that?
If we have...
Did you follow that? Because that is Trump's rationing. Rationality, not rationing. And he did, he's done another big one as well. I think I've got it much later here, but another like bizarre contradiction, just outright contradiction in what was going on. But yeah, I can't quite remember what it was. Anyway, this is another statement which I find really bizarre, just saying it's unfair that Iran fought back.
So it's a little unfair. You know, you win a war, but they have no right to be doing what they're doing.
It's a little unfair. You know, we win this war and here they are blocking the Straits of Hormuz. That's a bit unfair. I mean, we just blown the crap out of you. We've blown you up left, right and center. Pretty unfair. I'm giving you a yellow card. You got a red card. I'm sending you off. It's unfair. It's really unfair. Do you know how unfair this is?
But we're hitting them very hard. And today is a big day where we're pounding a certain area that has very much to do with the Strait. And I think we'll get it going very soon. So
I think we'll get it going. So listen to his language. It's so vague. It's always so vague and unspecific. There's such a lack of granularity. Anyway, getting on to Europe here and their response. Trump desperately needs to learn, says Yoni Escola, the concept of reciprocity. He constantly abandons, threatens, and insults Europe, only to turn around and demand our naval support. The idea that he has threatened Canada with being the 51st state of America, has threatened to invade a NATO nation, Denmark, and that, you know, and then has a trade war with the world, but particularly his allies, puts tariffs on the EU, slags off the EU, says the EU is nasty, then slags off the UK, and other times he's somewhat nice about the UK, but essentially he's still whacking tariffs on the UK. And then after doing all of this for as long as he has, he comes back and says, "Oh, can you guys help us?" It's absolutely outrageous. I mean, I think Justin Wolfers, The Economist, I wasn't going to do this bit yet, I'm in the middle of that part, but let's just interrupt that idea with Justin Wolfers here, The Economist, talking about, you know, making sense of what Trump is doing given what he's done.
It appears they calculate that there would be any ability to blockade a 4-mile stretch called the Strait of Hormuz. Mm-hmm. And it appears that they didn't make any plans for thinking about the fact that there would be economic consequences of war in the Middle East, which every other time there's ever been trouble in the Middle East has created economic consequences. So I want to be honest with your audience. I'm not a foreign relations guy. On these questions, did they plan? I'm not the person to ask. I'm not deeply sourced at the Pentagon. I read the papers just like you. But what I do know is I'm an economist, and I watched the trade war before I watched the Iran war. Mm-hmm. And if it's the same cast of characters, then I want to remind you the trade war began with the president announcing an utterly incoherent set of tariffs that had literally been decided the night before. That they were so incoherent, they forced that markets melted down, and 7 days later he was forced to retract them. Mm-hmm. That he then moved from war to diplomacy, claiming he moved to 90 deals in 90 days and proceeded to fail at that 90 times in a row. And then finally went back with a different set of tariffs, which were later ruled to be unconstitutional because the whole thing, of course, was Congress's job, not the White House's. And we're currently in a mess where they've got to figure out how to give everyone back their money. And it took the White House, I believe, 11 months to finally figure out that tariffs on bananas were not going to bring banana factories back to America because you can't have bananas here. And so we tariffed bananas for 11 months until we realized that that was nothing but a pure tax on Americans. Mm-hmm. And along the way, the president put a higher tax on the Swiss because the Swiss leader spoke to him in a tone of voice that he didn't like, suggesting he wasn't fully engaged in representing the best interests of the American people. All of that I know is a fact.
Okay. And then you expect, given all of that, you expect Europe to just go, yeah, or allies to just go, yeah, we're going to help you. All that tariff insanity that you've attacked us with, we're cool with that. We're just going to send our naval vessels to support you. He constantly abandons, threatens, and insults Europe, only to turn around and demand our naval support. He launched a massive war without warning us and now expects us to clean up the mess. His reckless war blocked vital shipping lanes and spiked global oil prices. He essentially handed Russia a massive financial gift while punishing our economies. He asked for our help after causing this absolute disaster. Who exactly does he think he is? He has publicly claimed multiple times that he already won the conflict. If the victory is so absolute, why does he desperately need our help? We owe him absolutely nothing for a geopolitical crisis he created entirely on his own without consulting us. If we asked him for help, he would demand major concessions. We must do the exact same. He needs to lift the trade tariffs immediately and send Tomahawks to Ukraine. The US helped Europe for decades and benefited greatly. It was a win-win situation back then, even as Europe became too weak and dependent. That era is over. Trump only harms Europe and gets no free help. But be ready. He will use this to threaten us even more, is what Yoni Ascola says. Now, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has said, what does Trump expect a handful of European frigates to do that the powerful US Navy cannot? This is not our war. We did not start it. Interesting. We've got the European Union has revolted against Trump and Netanyahu on helping the Strait of Hormuz. Quote from Keir. This is not the war of Europe, and we didn't start that. No one wants to actively go into this war. And then Spain, of course, has been very strong. A really good interview of Pedro Sanchez in The Rest is Politics, their podcast, an exceptional interview. Pedro Sanchez sounds like a really switched on guy. So Caroline Levitt, the White House press spokesperson, said, yes, the president is speaking with our allies to encourage them to do more to open the Strait of Hormuz. And our NATO allies especially need to help up, to step up. He's calling on them to do the right thing. So she's saying that our allies, she's talking in terms of allies, right? Whereas we're all lovely allies when you need us, when you want us, but otherwise you're trying to take Greenland away, or you're trying to make Canada part of your nation. And she says, our NATO allies especially need to step up. You need to step up. Now, Representative Don Beyer here says the Trump White House has continuously insulted and alienated our allies. So this is an American politician accepting that the Trump White House has insulted and alienated allies, including with indiscriminate tariffs. They failed to build a credible coalition that would support their reckless war of choice in Iran, and clearly didn't plan for the most predictable Iranian response in the Strait of Hormuz. And now they want these same allies to bail them out of an energy crisis of their own making, a completely self-inflicted failure. I'd absolutely agree with that. Now, as mentioned, the UK, Canada, France, Germany, and Italy have released a joint statement calling on Israel to avert a ground offensive in Lebanon due to the, quote, devastating humanitarian consequences. Those consequences are already playing out. So that is going on at the moment. And then at the same time, you've got Trump thinking about the next war he's going to get involved in, or the next move as part of this project.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good.
I got the honor. I do believe I'll have the honor of taking Cuba. I think we forget how many mental things Trump has done and said in 15 months. I mean, just thinking about what Justin Wolf was saying with regard to the trade war and the tariffs, and putting tariffs on bananas, and then realizing that you can't onshore bananas because you can't really grow bananas in the United States. Right, so then they take tariffs off bananas and coffee because they were stupid. But like that, and that was the whole protracted set of events. That was nuts. We've got Supreme Court justice insanity. We've got just everything. Just so much has happened. You know, bombing Iran the first time round, Venezuela, threats on Canada, threats on Greenland. Just the whole thing, whole 15 months of Trump has been a maelstrom of insanity. And now he's talking about taking Cuba.
Cuba, that'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth? They're a very weakened nation right now.
I think I could do anything I want with it. He's not talking about doing things in the American national interest. It's all about a flex of his own power. Honestly, notice that. It's really important. When he talks about American power, it's always a reflection of him. Like, I was the one that built when he talks about the greatest military in the world, it's because he built it up in Trump 1.0, which is a complete bastardization of the truth, of course. But it's always about him. He's the most self-obsessed, narcissistic, egotistical numbnut this side of Nagasaki. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, so Trump is waking up to the resistance from US allies to his demand to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz, says Alex Wickham. Keir Starmer says it's not easy and not straightforward. In fact, he said this before. Keir Starmer came out and said no. Japan says there's no plans to dispatch ships. Germany's Boris Pistorius rules out military assistance, asking what does Trump expect from a handful of European frigates. Italy's Antonio Tajani says the EU's Aspida's counter-Houthi naval mission can't be expanded to Hormuz. Europe says it's working on a viable plan for the Strait, i.e. the UK offering mine hunting drones, but it's clear they think a diplomatic outcome is needed and not a military one, and so on and so forth. All of these nations really, and you've had Canada and Australia, I think, they were initially somewhat supportive of Trump's bombing of Iran, but now less so. Here you got a former Pentagon official admits the truth on CNN, saying that NATO allies are refusing to help the US because Trump completely ignored them in the run-up to the war. He started a unilateral conflict and now expects Europe to clean up the mess. And that's coming from former Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense for European and NATO policy, Jim Townsend. Then you have here, this is, we'll listen to this one.
I don't think the European countries are going to come and bail Trump out of this mess. I think you have to think about the context here. Trump just spent a year hurting their economies on purpose, threatening to attack NATO, threatening to pull out of NATO. And then they started this war, the Trump administration started this war without even bothering to consult them, didn't take their interests into account until he needed them. And their populations are at historic levels of anti-Americanism because of how we've treated them over the last year. And they're democracies, so I don't think their leaders are going to be able to overcome that. And why would they? It's much easier, and you'll see a bunch of countries doing this, to negotiate with the Iranians. The Iranians are setting up a system whereby they let the ships pass that they want to let pass. Just in the last 24 hours, they let several ships pass for countries that they're not at war with. So if you were any country in the world depending on this strait, it's much easier to make a deal with the Iranians than to send your ships down the strait to make them sitting ducks for the Iranian drones and missiles, which seems crazy reckless. I don't think the Europe.
Interesting. Let's go back to that map, actually. I was reading, I need to fact check this. So my recollection of what I was reading, be careful, but it's taken them 20 years to build a pipeline that goes right across here. And they've just opened it up now. And they appear to have spent all this time building a huge pipeline across Saudi Arabia to pump stuff from essentially the Gulf of Oman, is it here, to the Red Sea, in order to get around this problem. Really, really incredible foresight. Well, what if something goes wrong here? Well, we'll need to get oil from all of these oil areas across to the Red Sea and be able to use the Red Sea to ship out some oil. So now they are suddenly pumping 7 million barrels a day, is it, down this pipeline? They just turned it on, and that has relieved things quite a lot. But Saudi Arabia, a bit clever there in that. I mean, the flow is, it's insufficient, but the idea is that that's 7 million barrels a day that wasn't previously going. So, it's not replacing that, but I just thought that's quite a bit of foresight there from Saudi Arabia, and probably not a little bit of investment in that. So senior White House staff. So then it's trying to understand how this happened again. So there's all this kind of going back in time and working out how Trump said yes to this war. I've talked a lot about how this is Netanyahu's ideological crusade that he has been wanting to do for 30 years, but no other US president has agreed, and he's manipulated Trump into a position where he's agreed. You've got Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and Stephen Miller, all of them Jewish. I don't know if that plays a part, but maybe whispering things to Trump there. And that could be an interesting dynamic to look at. But also the idea that he feels really strong after Venezuela and Iran last year, that he's just got this fallacy of invincibility. But anyway, senior White House staff are saying Trump is regretting the decision to strike Iran, having assumed being a wartime president would result in the same 80% approval ratings given George W. Bush received. Sending our troops to die for poll numbers, unbelievable. So that is a rumor that's swirling around, that he thought he'd get the rally round a flag effect, and that was part of it. You've got here a source close to the administration said some key officials, says Barbara Comstock, some key officials around Trump were reluctant or wanted more time. He ended up saying, I just want to do it, the source said. He grossly overestimated his ability to topple the regime short of sending in ground troops. So this is the idea that some key officials were saying, no, and Dan Kane is one of them apparently, saying, no, not sure this is a good idea. And he's like, no, want to do it. Let's do it. The source said Trump was high, quote, high on his own supply after last summer's quick strikes in Iran and January's abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Quote, he saw multiple decisive quick victories with extraordinary military competence. This is exactly what I've been saying. The source close to the administration said some key officials around him, reluctant, wanting more time, as has been mentioned. There you go. It's just doubled up there. Axios, that is coming from behind the curtain. The Iran war is the first time Trump's style has made it impossible for him to easily talk or improvise his way out. Some in his inner circle have what one official called buyer's remorse, growing fears that attacking Iran was a mistake. Interesting. Then we hear that Turkish journalist Yahya Bostan saying Netanyahu convinced Trump by saying, quote, kill the leader and the rest will be easy. The people will overthrow the regime. 3 weeks later, regime change is no longer even discussed. The war has narrowed to the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump is now seeking international support to reopen the shipping route. He's probably deeply regretting it now. Of course, all of these slightly different understandings of what happened, I think, can be true mutually. They're not mutually exclusive. Here we have Radoslav Sikorski, the foreign minister for Poland, saying it's slightly disconcerting that President Trump is speaking of NATO in terms of them and not in terms of us. And this is a really interesting point. Always concentrate on the little things. It gives you an insight into the wider sense of what's going on in Trump's mind here. So if he's always talking about NATO as them, NATO, they, them, they, rather than us, we are NATO. I mean, he did say NATO is us earlier, but that's like, we're so strong, all of these other people are irrelevant. But at other times, he kind of otherizes NATO. And they're this thing that, you know, we're paying for, but it's these guys' thing. And I think that's an interesting observation there. He commented on US President Donald Trump's demands that European NATO member states help clear the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously not a fan of doing that. Now, Energy Secretary Chris Wright has said that the US-Israel war may last a few more weeks. Mike Waltz said today discussions are underway for countries to help reopen the Straits of Hormuz. Yes. So 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. Now, Pete Hegseth has got into a bit of theological hot water by saying, quote, the war in Iran is protected by God, to which the Pope said, do not involve the name of God in choices of death. God cannot be enlisted in darkness. Ouch. As this person says, 1-0 to Pope Leo the 14th. And he's a fellow American, right? Trump has been banging on about AI images and fake stuff and ships blowing up being fake, and it's just absolute nonsense. You can go and see these ships now as charred remains. Like, there's plenty of footage of these ships just sitting out there now, burnt to a crisp. And he's talking about these USVs, unmanned surface vehicles, being like, how can they get out there, you know, pilot them quickly to blow up these ships? It's like, have you not seen what Ukraine's done with these? Have you not seen the Arctic metagas out floating still out in the middle of the Mediterranean with a massive gaping hole in the side? That's what USVs can do. Anyway, or there may have been UAV, I don't really know, but Ukraine has been so adept at using all of these things, and Iran likewise. The idea that it's fake news, it's all AI. I mean, he can't handle that there's negative consequences, you know, images like this showing that Iran do have some cards to play. New York Times and New York Post both confirmed the deadly strike on the US ships is real. Trump said it was AI, but multiple news organizations on both sides of the political spectrum have confirmed footage of strikes against US ships. It's just like trying to deny reality to keep a handle on the narrative that's spinning out of his control. Then we hear that Steve Witkoff, who is the envoy to the Middle East. He's the envoy to Russia. He's the envoy to, I don't know, Mars, the universe, everyone, to Doris next door. Steve Witkoff, I mean, he's ran there for a cup of tea yesterday. He's like, what are you doing here as well? Aren't you supposed to be out there? Oh, yeah, no, I do everything, he says. And then took Doris out for a game of golf. It's amazing. But anyway, Steve Witkoff is known as a staunch supporter of Israel. He counts pro-Israel megadonor Miriam Adelson as a dear friend. So Miriam Adelson has given Trump almost as much money as Elon Musk, possibly more over time, actually. And arguably, so some theories that Miriam Adelson was, I think Megyn Kelly, was she talking about this? But Miriam Adelson is behind, getting Trump to do this on behalf of Israel. And carries a custom. Now, this is a bit that's totally worrying here. Steve Witkoff apparently carries a custom pager gifted to him by Netanyahu and senior Mossad officials. Now, if that is true, that comes from responsiblestatecraft.org. If that's true, that's absolutely outrageous. We know that Hezbollah had all of those pages that essentially Mossad had got to them. They'd infiltrated the supply chain, put the explosives in the pages, given them to Hezbollah, waited a few years, listened to him on got all the numbers and all the communications, and then waited for a moment and exploded all the pages. They're the same people that have given Steve Witkoff a customized pager. Everything Steve Witkoff is saying is going back to Mossad and Israel. Apparently, and again, pinch of salt for this, needs to be fact-checked. Apparently, a US diplomat has been carrying around a piece of electronics belonging to a foreign intelligence service. Cannot make this stuff up. We need jail time for these clowns. It is a real worry. This is from May the 14th, 2025, from The Atlantic. Steve Witkoff emptied his backpack on the conference table in the second floor office in the West Wing. He wanted to show me a pager given to him by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and senior officials of the Mossad. The pager commemorates the intricate operation in which Israel detonated handheld devices used by Hezbollah, the Iranian-sponsored Lebanese militant group, killing or maiming thousands of its operatives. Witkoff located the gadget amid a tangle of electronics he uses to communicate abroad in his role as America's shadow Secretary of State. Now, the other bit of information that we need to remember is that Steve Witkoff doesn't use, am I correct in saying he doesn't use encrypted government communications device to do all this work? So he is the Russia and the Kremlin, the FSB and Mossad will know everything that Steve Witkoff does. And you wonder why we've had recordings of Steve Witkoff phone calls now between him and Ushakov released to the public. Where have they come from? Who knows? But he is honestly, like, if I was a CIA, I'd be like, why are we still using this guy? Has anyone briefed? Has he got any training on any? What is going on here? Anyway, Witkoff located the gadget amid a tangle of electronics he uses to communicate abroad as his role as America's shadow Secretary of State. To the back of the pager, he proudly told me, carries the inscription, "Dear Steve, friend of the State of Israel," and then the acronym OTJ for One Tough Jew. Nuts stuff. Is absolutely nuts. Anyway, there you go, Steve Witkoff. Adam Kinzinger here, just having a whinge.
What in the world does Iran or does Russia have on Donald Trump? Now, Donald Trump, to reward Russia for our stupid act, has allowed India to buy oil again from Russia. That was a big victory when we stopped that. Now they're doing it. They say for 30 days. I don't imagine that is not going to be waived again. And then all the oil that Russia had stuck on the high seas, they're now allowed to sell it. This is a boon for Russia. $150 million a day they're getting. In addition, because of increased oil prices, now take into account the oil that's been sitting on the high seas that now they'll be able to sell. You are funding the enemy of Ukraine Russia is helping the enemy of the United States, Iran, to target American troops, and Donald Trump is rewarding Russia. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. What in the world does Iran or does Russia have on Donald Trump? Because whatever it is, it's got to be exciting, because he will not turn against them for anything. What?
Which leads me on to Christopher Steele. I'm told by, and don't be fooled by the lies, Christopher Steele is, so he got, I said this the other day, and I'm repeating myself here, but Christopher Steele got denigrated for the Steele dossier because people cherry picked out the P tapes part of it, right? Which hasn't been disproved. But because that was quite salacious and it hadn't been disproved, and it was kind of, it sounded a bit like controversial hearsay, the Steele dossier was kind of thrown out. The baby was thrown out with the bathwater, and Christopher Steele got a bad rep. But actually, he's a pretty reputable guy, right? And a lot of work went into that Steele dossier. So don't be fooled by the lies. Christopher Steele is one of the most well-informed Russian counterintelligence operatives worldwide. When he makes a claim, there is meat to it. The dossier has been proven right, not wrong. Christopher Steele then says, I'm told by reliable sources in both the US and Russia that the Kremlin has had the Epstein files and more similar for years. They have the Epstein files. And you wonder why Trump has never, ever denigrated Vladimir Putin or the Russians. Why he consistently sides with the Russians against Ukraine. Why when he looks like he's going to do something positive for Ukraine, like give them Tomahawks, he gets a phone call from Vladimir Putin and the next day he U-turns. Adam Kinzinger is right to say, what have the Russians got on Trump? And I think it's eminently plausible that they have, because Epstein's connections to Russia were profligate. They were just myriad. And his connections to Mossad. He was connected to both entities. He had huge numbers of connections. I read a whole list of connections that Epstein had to Russia out in a previous video. Even down to like what his driver was Russian. He had, Russian girls coming in, Russian this, Russian that, real estate, all sorts of Russian connections. And it seems very not just plausible, but probable that Russia would have the Epstein files, would have that compromat. Any compromat that Epstein had, the Russians and the Israelis are going to have it. So we've got Trump here kowtowing possibly to the Israelis, because it might be interesting if the Israelis saying, we want you to do this and we've got this on you, and the Russians saying, we don't want you to do this and we've got this on you as well. What do I do? There's no winning. But anyway, he's gone and I think done Netanyahu's bidding here, but he is very much, I think, compromised Donald Trump. This was the one where this was supposed to be earlier. This is another kind of complete double talk. This is your double speak from Donald Trump, except this double speak makes no sense. So he's asked, well, here it is.
It is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So what
he said, so in case you didn't hear, you've said it's an excursion, a little excursion, and you've also said it's a war. What is it? Is it an excursion or a war?
one is it?
Well, it's both. It's both. It's an excursion that will keep us out of a war, and the war is going to be. For them, it's a war. For us, it's turned out to be easier than we thought.
He can't make any less sense. Is it an excursion or a war? And he says it's both, and it's an excursion so that we don't have to go to a war. Well, then it's not a war, so it can't be both. You've literally just contradicted yourself. They want it to be a war, but it was too easy. Oh, so if it's easy, it's not a war. Wars are only difficult. You can't have an easy war. Like, if you massacre the other side, it's not a war. It's just, I don't know, a big jolly involving bombs and stuff. The man is insane. He's just, honestly, the man is nuts. Right, we're going to go on to this, which is well worth a little look at. Before we do so, let's see what you guys have to say. Thank you, Badger for Peace. Hey, JP, Legend of the Multiverse. True that. And do you know why? Because I gave that award to myself. I can do that because our mate Ramzan Kadyrov gave himself Hero of Chechnya. Invented the award and gave it to himself. So I've given myself Legend of the Multiverse. Keep up the great work. Do you think a just peace for Ukraine is achievable by the end of 27? Yes, I think by the end of 27. I'm all over the shop as to what I think is going to go on, and it changes in Ukraine. So I'm quite upbeat at the moment, given all these FP drones, FP1s and FP2s and missiles and whatnot. But then the US seem to be going back to either not being bothered about Ukraine or just overtly denigrating Zelensky and Ukraine and being nice to Russia. And so you're then thinking, oh, bloody hell. It's up to Europe to hold the ship steady there, but then they desperately need to get rid of that 90 billion euro loan, get that offloaded to Ukraine. And so I don't know, though. I'm just all over the shop, and it does change. But I think Russia was in a massively brittle position. The fragility of its economy was clear to see. But now with the war, like, Trump has given Putin. That's what Adam Kinzinger is saying. It's just given him a gift. What does Putin have over him? Because this is a gift. Ignis of the Flame, and thank you, by the way, Badger, for peace. He can't use Ukraine thousands of miles away when Israel is the same case. It's so stupid. Iran is further away than Ukraine. Like, so I've made this point before, Ignis, so I'm with you here. He says, and in the same conversation, he's like, yeah, we're not bothered about Ukraine. It's too far away. I mean, why would we be bothered about a war that's that far away? Anyway, can you help us with the Straits of Hormuz? You know, the war that's even further away. Yeah, can you help us with that? Because we're really invested in that. We're bombing the crap out of Iran. Okay, so the distance from the United States really has nothing to do with the importance. Okay, be quiet. Yes. Right. Thank you, Ignis. Ruff. You rock as always. He dead yet? I presume you're referring to the Mango Mussolini. The pirate. Trump should ask his border peace for help. Right. Okay. I said I was going to do this. This is a bit of Benny Pie genius here. Thank you to Benny Pie. Well, I say Benny Pie genius. It's Gemini genius, but prompted by Benny Pie's cleverness. Trump should ask his border peace for help. Should we have a look at the border peace? Right, I had this laid up for you, so I love it when a plan comes together. Border peace correlated with corruption perceptions index. The further to the right the bars are, the less corrupt you are. The further to the left the bars are, the more corrupt you are. Average Europe's average of corruption all the way over here, which is, let's have a look at this, which is that's 70. So we're talking 70 plus. I think that's, yeah, 70 plus. Okay, so you don't need to know exactly what 70 means, other than it's all relative here. So Europe's average in corruption is not very corrupt. The EU average, excluding the border peace, by the way, so if you take the border peace out of here, EU is not very corrupt because, by the way, Hungary is corrupt, and it's in the EU and it's in the border peace. But the EU average, excluding the border peace, is pretty good. The NATO average, excluding the border peace, not very corrupt there. And then G7 average, excluding the border peace, not very corrupt. Okay, now let's look at who's on the border peace. Okay, we've got some not very corrupt members like the United Arab Emirates. I mean, less than the EU and Europe, but more than NATO. That's because NATO has Turkey and it has Hungary. and a few others, like I think Montenegro and maybe a couple of others. It might not be super cool. But anyway, the United Arab Emirates, and you got United States, which, by the way, United States is more corrupt than EU average and Europe average. You got Israel, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Jordan, going down and down and down. And now we're getting corrupt. I mean, Jordan, pretty corrupt. Armenia, Kuwait, Kosovo, Vietnam, Bulgaria, Hungary. Okay, there are some of your EU nations that are more corrupt. And Hungary, by the way, so its number here is what, 42? In 2012, I think it's 55. So Orban has taken that down the scale. Orban is responsible for Hungary running backwards in terms of corruption. Albania, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Argentina, Indonesia, El Salvador, Mongolia, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Egypt, Pakistan, Paraguay, Cambodia. These are the nations in the Board of Peace, right? So anyway, I just, get the Board of Peace to help. Well, yeah, they could help, but, they are a corrupt bunch of people. And I honestly, just what a racket this thing is. What a racket the Board of Peace is. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, thanks for Benny Pie for putting that together. I wanted to show that, and I have. So thank you. Trump does not understand that NATO is a defensive organization. OMG. I mean, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Shyster Hobbit says, 1987, he railed against NATO in the Washington Post, New York Times, and Boston Globe. He's a deep-seated hatred that the project team desire in their front man. Okay, there's a little bit more to this, Shyster, as well. I mean, it's a really good point. So what happened is in 1986, was it, or was it 86 to 87? He went to 87. He went to Moscow. And when he came back from Moscow, and bear in mind, he's just a real estate mogul, comes back from Moscow, takes out a full-page spread in, as you mentioned, Washington Post, New York Times, Boston Globe, at an expense. I mean, was it something like $80,000 worth of adverts? He takes out these huge adverts where he's slagging off NATO. Why would a real estate mogul go to Moscow, come back from Moscow, and then immediately on returning from Moscow, take out something that looks like Russian propaganda as adverts in national print media? This is one of the really big arguments to suggest that Trump is compromised, because I don't think anything else explains that data well enough. So there's something in philosophy called abductive reasoning, inference to the best explanation. And in its simplest forms, you have like two hypotheses. Trump is, so in this case, it's Trump is compromised, Trump isn't compromised. And the idea is inference to the best explanation. What best explain? You can do it either way. Like, what would you predict given one of these things? Like, Trump is compromised, Trump isn't compromised. Or looking at a bit of data, which thesis, which hypothesis does it best, which bucket does it best go into? Taking out those adverts in those newspapers is best explained by Donald Trump is compromised. Is that simple? And thank you for that. Janice says, nobody in the government has any say about anything except him. Citizens and our representatives be damned. We don't want any of this. No, it's so sad. Like, where is Congress? Congress, it turns out that it could be that all the checks and balances the Americans thought they had were more likely norms as opposed to actual mechanisms. So I wonder whether Trump is just showing that you can blast norms out of the way, or it's just that's what usually we do because we trust each other to do that. Well, actually, if it isn't legally set down, if there isn't this fail-safe mechanism to stop me doing this, and I'm going to do this because I don't give a damn about norms, says Trump. So we just blast through all that, and it turns out these checks and balances don't seem to exist, or they're not being utilized for one reason or another. Right. Last one before we go back. The pirate says, my contribution so you can get a new mic that can have the Ukrainian colors lighting up your nice, good voice. Love your lives, mate. Bromance. Thanks, pirate. It's really kind of you. And thanks for your kind Norwegian love there. I should probably get some stickers for the back here. It's not a bad idea, actually. I've got stickers on the back of my laptop lid when I've been to Ukraine and got all these, go to the petrol stations and getting these things. There's been a poll created in the live chat. Thank you for that. I can't see that through this system that I use here. I have to go and look at my at the actual live on YouTube. But thanks for that, Benny. So if you want to get involved in that, please answer the poll question. I'm now going to see what it looks like, what the question is. Oh, I'm hearing myself. That's exciting. Poll is, how do you think the Iran crisis will play out? Choose an option or comment with an alternative. So do you think a coalition of the unwilling ships, coalition of unwilling ships sail, 4%, diplomacy prevails, and Iran, the US will do a deal, 7%, prolonged warfare and some disruption, 39%, severe global economic crisis, 51%. And I guess some of these are not mutually exclusive. So you can have a prolonged warfare and some disruption with severe global economic crisis. Coalition of the unwilling, will we send ships? So only 4% think that that's likely. Looks like most people have a negative view on how this is going to turn out, a severe global economic crisis by the looks of it. Thanks, Benny Pie, for doing that. Always good to get you guys views, get you guys thinking. Right, we're going to go to this. So Kuwaiti analyst, and bear in mind, this is just one voice, right? So it's anecdotal, possibly. A Kuwaiti analyst openly criticized Gulf policy towards Washington after the latest strike, saying the region paid billions for influence and received nothing in return. Now, what's interesting about this is even if this is only anecdotal and one voice, he's saying some pretty sensitive stuff here, or as in he's going for the jugular, because we've talked before about Jared Kushner came out of Trump 1.0 with a $2 billion investment from the Saudis, right? They put $2 billion in his venture capitalist, whatever thing, his investment fund. And you're like, what do they get back for that? And they keep giving this money. Qatar gives a jet to Trump, and he goes, as soon as he gets in Trump 2.0, he goes to the Middle East. They then give him loads of stuff, but it's quid pro quo, right? This for that. What is that they get back for giving that money to Trump? And this guy's saying, we've paid billions for influence and received nothing in return. He pointed directly to Jared Kushner, noting the Gulf money flowed heavily into his orbit, yet the same states that financed those channels still ended up facing strikes and pressure. His conclusion was appeasing Zionist interests and trying to buy leverage in Washington has produced humiliation, not protection. Gulf governments, he argued, must rethink the entire strategy of trying to influence the United States through money while being expected to serve Israel's regional agenda. I mean, wowzers, that is pretty hardcore, but interesting nonetheless. And just a note, Sean Pinner here, I've interviewed him a number of times, great guy. He says, and this is the idea that Trump is helping NATO and Ukraine, and therefore NATO should be helping Trump in the Straits of Hormuz. But actually, he's not really helping Ukraine. He's pulled humanitarian aid. He's stopped military aid. He's previously halted intelligence sharing. He's sold weapons to NATO and allies at a profit. So he's profiteering. He's not helping. He's just acting as a shop. He's abstained on a UN vote condemning Russian attacks on Ukraine's infrastructure. And actually, they voted against the last one, not just abstained, they voted against the last one. Now threatens allies over Iran. He's relaxed sanctions on Russia. The strategic bandwidth is stretched. Ukraine's allies are distracted. And now America is widening war with Iran, ocean or not. The idea that Trump is helping Ukraine is just ostensibly wrong. And in fact, Adam Schiff here has this to a T. on NBC. He on Meet the Press. He nails it, Adam Schiff.
We are now giving Russia essentially $140 million a day by releasing these Russia from these sanctions. $140 million a day when Iran is providing intelligence to better, when Russia is providing intelligence to Iran to better attack and kill American troops. And you're darn right when you ask the secretary about this, it is rewarding Russia. And it is punishing Ukraine. And for the president, when he's criticized about lifting the sanctions on Russia, to somehow turn around and blame Zelensky, blame Ukraine. No, Russia is the problem here, and we are enriching our adversary Russia at Ukraine's expense because the administration didn't properly foresee how much this war with Iran was going to raise oil prices and gas prices for Americans. So terrible and tragic decision, which only empowers Russia to make war more fully against Ukraine.
Absolutely spot on there. He's nailed that. And I talked about this the other day, but it's being reported now in the mainstream media, which is good to hear. This isn't to do with Iran per se, just moving slightly off topic, but Trump is offering private national security briefings, although it is relevant to Iran because you would get access to the national security briefings, to donors through a fundraising email from his super PAC, promising unfiltered updates on the threats facing America. He's promising unfiltered, which means we're not going to take stuff out that's too sensitive. You get unfiltered national security updates, briefings, private national security briefings if you donate to the Trump campaign. Just do people not understand that this is a national security risk? Oh, I've paid you £1 million, right? Do I get to listen to the national security briefings? Classified stuff, please. Thank you. Private, unfiltered. Oh, right. I'm just recording this, right? I've got a mate. My mate Ivan, right? My mate Ivan, he's not Russian. I mean, he is Russian. He's not Russian. Anyway, but is it all right if my mate Ivan listens in as well and we record it? What is this absolute insanity?
Growing criticism tonight after a new fundraising email from President Trump's Political Action Committee used an image from last Saturday's dignified transfer honoring 6 U.S. soldiers killed in the U.S. war with Iran. The email also promises access to private national security briefings. Let's bring in CNN's Andrew Kaczynski, who joins us now. Andrew, you've been digging into this. What are you learning?
So this email was sent on Thursday night by Donald Trump's Political Action Committee. It's called Never Surrender. That is the PAC that supports Donald Trump. It's taken over for his campaign. This email was sent out Thursday night, and it's like you said, it promised private national security briefings. And in the middle of that email, there you can see it right there, is that photo from the dignified transfer of the remains of those soldiers who were killed in Kuwait in that Iranian drone strike. And right there, it's sandwiched in between two links that say claim your spot. And if you click on that, it takes you to a donation page for President Trump's Political Action Committee. It's got a lot of people outraged online, a lot of Democrats, a lot of members of Congress, a lot of former national security officials who are angry, saying that, you know, this is these soldiers were killed in a war that Donald Trump started, and now they're being used in a fundraising email by his Political Action Committee. We did reach out to the White House to ask about this yesterday and the Republican National Committee, and we didn't hear back from either of them asking about this email.
As you can read that, as a national security briefing member, you'll receive my private national security briefings, unfiltered updates on the threats facing America, the straight truth.
And Andrew, to your knowledge,
on border invasions, foreign adversaries,
have presidential
deep something sabotage. Just what the flibbity gibbets is going on there? Just what timeline are we living in? And then the final one on this man's insanity. I told you he keeps having a pop at Gavin Newsom, and the fact that he said that you know, growing up with dyslexia was challenging for him, Newsom. Trump now says that he's got a mental disorder and a learning disability and this and that, and he shouldn't be able to run as president, whilst at the same time, because he's got mental degradation, he's calling Newsom, the president of the United States.
With a low IQ person, you know, because Gavin Newsom has admitted that he has learning disabilities. Honestly, I'm all for people with learning disabilities, but not for my president. I think a president should not have learning disabilities, okay? And I know it's highly controversial to say such a horrible thing. The president of the United States, Gavin Newsom, admitted that he has learning disabilities.
So he just called Gavin Newsom the president of the United States, whilst also calling him Newscum because he's like a 5-year-old child, Donald Trump. Just anyway, he's an idiot. He's juvenile. He's and it's really interesting. That interview with the Rest is Politics is well worth watching. And he talks about how he had this conversation, this phone call with Trump about, I can't remember what it was about now, but he had this phone call. He said, we talked about this, this, and this. And then after having the phone call, Trump then went on the media, said, Newsom just said this, or we discussed this. And he's like, that never happened. He literally wholly lied about the phone call. Trump is just an outright liar. Anyway, yeah. Someone's saying Trump has dyslexia and he is projecting. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Right, just moving on to other geopolitical bits and pieces. And I like this from Keir Starmer. This is reminding Europe, or reminding the British people here, that Ukraine is the one to keep your eye on.
And I'll be meeting President Zelensky soon, because it's vital that we continue to focus on supporting Ukraine. We cannot allow the war in the Gulf to turn into a windfall for Putin. And I'll be meeting President Zelensky.
That is really good to hear. We're strong allies with the US, but it is for me to act in what I consider to be the best interests of Britain. If you're PM, you don't get to come back a week later and say, oops, I made a mistake about that war. The longer war in Iran goes on, the higher the risk of escalation and the bigger the impact to the economy, energy prices, and the cost of living. We do need to keep working for de-escalation. In the end, there is going to have to be a negotiated settlement. All stuff that I generally, or I do completely agree with there. Now, the Foreign Minister Vadeful, despite, this is a German Foreign Minister, despite the Middle East tensions, Ukraine remains Europe's top security priority. Yes. The 90 billion euros must not be held hostage any longer. Blocking it violates our joint EU decision to support Ukraine, plays into Russia's hands, and is deeply un-European. Higher oil and gas prices fill Russia's war chest. That's why Germany and the EU firmly support energy sanctions and want further measures to cut Russian revenues. Easing sanctions now would be completely wrong. Spot on there from Vadeful. Good to hear that. Now, this is fascinating stuff. So you've just had Mark Carney go.
I am very grateful, I have to say.
You've just had Mark Carney go on a trip around the world where he's been to Japan, I think. He's been all around Europe. He's really gone to town on meeting loads of different leaders. And Mark Carney here was together with Mette Frederiksen and other Nordic, I think, leaders. This is a fascinating little snippet.
I am very grateful, I have to say this, for all the help we have received in the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland and Denmark. We have had a totally unacceptable pressure from US and the US president. It has been very difficult for the people in Greenland to experience this. And one of the reasons why we have been able to stand firmly on very common values, that you have to respect sovereign states, that you have to respect a people's right for self-determination, is because of our good friends in the Nordic countries, in Europe, but also with partners outside, especially you, Mark. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. I am very grateful, I have to say this.
Really interesting. And, you know, talking about in light of the threats from the US. Very explicit there. Listen again.
For all the help we have received in the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland, and Denmark, we have had a totally unacceptable pressure from US and the US president.
We have had totally unacceptable pressure from the US and US president. I think that statement has gone unnoticed because so much other stuff is going on. But that is a strong rebuke. It's totally unacceptable. Here's another snippet.
Thank you so much. I do agree, and it's really great to see the most.
This is Ulf Kristersson from Sweden.
Nordic country outside the Nordics in a meeting in the Nordics. So really great to see you here. I think it's a sign of our time, honestly, that the Nordic Five and Canada is working so well together. It proves your case. Middle powers make big difference. Thank you so much.
So this whole middle power thing, but actually Canada's starting to do some interesting deals with Nordic states. So for example, a quiet shift is happening in the Arctic. Canada and the Nordic countries are building deeper defense ties around Greenland and Arctic security. Taken together, they control most of the Western Arctic. A new middle power security bloc may be emerging. So rather than being forced to do what the United States wants them to do, Canada is going to, Greenland and Norway and Sweden and Denmark and Finland and Iceland, and looking to, do things with their Arctic neighbors. Canada and the Nordic countries agreed to ramp up defense production and deepen security cooperation to counter Russia in the Arctic and push back against US pressure on Greenland. There's really interesting positioning there. In fact, we have Karen Spanuk from Canada saying, just imagine what Trump will include in the security briefing. Canada's planning to invade. Greenland threatens the US, EU and Nazis, all to create hate. Yes, indeed. That's referring back to that email situation from before. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting change of positioning there. Now, worrying news coming from Poland. I mentioned this yesterday. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has warned that a potential Polish exit from the EU is now a real threat, accusing nationalist President Karol Nawrocki and right-wing opposition parties of steering the country toward leaving the bloc. Now, this is really frustrating because Poland have been rewarded by being in the EU. Their economic success has been on the back of EU membership, right? And then to have these EU skeptics then gather more and more momentum to take them out, they're just doing the bidding of both, I think, the Trumpian MAGA approach to the EU, which is the EU as a threat, and Russia as well, undermining the EU at every conceivable opportunity. Polish Prime Minister Tusk warns of Pole exit as a real threat, driven by the Confederation Party. They sit to the right of PIS, Law and Justice Party. Most PIS members and presidential candidate Nawrocki, backed by Russia, the US MAGA movement, and European far-right forces led by Orban. Tusk has pledged to stop them, but it's a really difficult task there. Now, on the European side of things, the EU has extended sanctions against Russia for another 6 months. That doesn't need a unanimous vote, I don't think. EU councils approved the extension of restrictions against around 2,600 individuals. That has to happen every 6 months. And entities responsible for the aggression against Ukraine until September the 15th, 2026. The sanctions include the asset freeze, ban on providing funds, and the travel restrictions. 2 individuals were not included in the list and 5 deceased persons were excluded. The EU confirmed its determination to keep up the pressure on Russia until the war and negotiations end and negotiations begin. Now, Bloomberg has talked about Bart De Wever. So sorry, my Belgian friends that might be watching this. I don't think Sophie is watching at the moment. Not seen her. But European officials slammed a call by Bart De Wever, who phoned Putin to cut a deal with Russia's dictator to end the war in Ukraine and resume the flow of cheap Russian energy to Europe. That's not gone down well, it appears. And then we have the US has proposed moving the trilateral meeting between Russia, the US, and Ukraine to next week due to the Middle East situation. America is ready to host. Ukraine agrees, but Russia won't travel to the US, Zelensky has said. Meanwhile, Dmitry Peskov has said talks on Ukraine are on pause because Americans have other priorities, which is pretty spot on. Zelensky says a direct meeting with Trump is needed as some issues have stalled at the team level, including negotiations, drones, and the Middle East. So I don't think Zelensky's particularly happy with the state of affairs at the moment with regard to negotiations and really how far down the list Ukraine has been shunted. Now, just a few things. Palantir is a real worry. You're starting to get a bit of waking up to Palantir. I've shown you a couple of videos of Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, talking about being responsible for killing people and it's part of their remit. He was giving a talk recently, and someone was heckling him, saying that he's killed Palestinians. He basically admitted that he had. He said most were terrorists, like most, but not all. Like literally, Palantir has been responsible for killing Palestinians, and he's admitted that. Absolutely incredible. Anyway, it's starting to get pushback in the NHS in the UK. So Palantir has these contracts all over the UK government that's been taking place over the last, I don't know how many years. One of my criticisms of Labour in power at the moment is that they've not done enough to get rid of, hey, Greg, not done enough to get rid of Peter Thiel and Palantir and their influence in the UK politics, right? And I think our government needs to be working hard at that. They're starting to gather momentum. Anyway, I just thought this would be interesting. This is coming from some chap who says, I am an ex-Palantir executive, and it is factually correct that Palantir intended to take over the US government while heavily funding the effort. Many of my ex-colleagues are now installed inside the USG apparatus. There is a reason the C-suite of Palantir has me blocked. The enemy is within, and we are currently an occupied nation. We basically have a terrorist entity deeply embedding itself in the US government. Now, this is arguably what is happening. You've had a number of people that have now left Palantir, and a number of people that have been involved in this writing open letters saying, please be wary of Palantir. It is properly an issue, etc., etc. And this is something to watch. Honestly, I keep talking about Palantir. I will keep mentioning it. It is something to watch. Go and look at the number of people who have left Palantir and who have come out and are whistleblowing about Palantir. It is a very worrying scenario. Anyway, here we have the source is Pulse today saying Michael Gove. Michael Gove was a Brexiteer, conservative. He's now in the House of Lords, but he's a former cabinet. He was an education secretary when I was a teacher, and I hated him as an education secretary. It's horrible. It's like, this is what we learned. His basic approach to education in the UK was like, this is what I learned at school. Therefore, this is what students should learn now. So, okay, so you think you're great, and because you learned this stuff, so that's what we should all be teaching students nowadays. Okay, whatever. He was a terrible. I did not like him as an education secretary. Anyway, Michael Gove's cozy links with Palantir need far more scrutiny. In September 2019, when overseeing the EU exit, when Brexit, from the Cabinet Office, Gove held a meeting with Palantir that was officially described only as a chat about Brexit readiness. Palantir then secured a 27 million no tender contract. So no one else got to tender for it. They just got a 27 million pound contract from the Cabinet Office in August 2020 for border and customs data processing post-Brexit. A freedom of information battle later forced the release of briefing material, with the Information Commissioner stressing the public interest in understanding how this controversial US spy tech firm was being brought into core state functions. Reporting cited in that decision showed Palantir's platform was trialed by Gove's team for border analysis and reporting around no-deal planning and post-transition border flows, just as Palantir was stepping up its lobbying of ministers like Gove and Matt Hancock. Fast forward, and Palantir is now embedded across the UK state, from post-Brexit border data tools to NHS England's vast federated data platform contract worth hundreds of millions, giving a Trump-backing surveillance company deep access to health and population data. The through line is clear: quiet meetings in Whitehall, opaque freedom of information fights, and then massive data deals awarded with minimal democratic debate. Gove is right in the middle of that story. Palantir already have all of that in the US government. So they've got all the immigration data. They have got contracts all over the shop. ICE, for example, Palantir behind them. Then when Elon Musk went in with Doge, everyone was saying, oh, he's trying to cut costs and, he's sacking people and doing this. Actually, what he was really doing is sending in his guys to scrape government data from different government departments, because AI tools, the data they don't have is stuff like social security numbers and data from government agencies and departments. Well, Elon Musk got that data. And then with his association with Palantir and Peter Thiel, that data arguably has gone to Palantir. And just anyway, it's all incredibly worrying. What's the final thing I'm going to talk to you about? Yeah, let's go back to Venezuela. When Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testified before the House Financial Services Committee last month, he refused to explain where, how, or under what authority he is controlling funds from Venezuelan oil sales. So remember, Trump's gone in, kidnapped Maduro, stolen Venezuelan oil, and that money is going to an offshore bank account so the Trump administration can spend it how? I don't know. No one knows. He refused to explain where, how, or under what authority he is controlling funds from Venezuelan oil sales. Senator Chris Van Hollen and I, this is Representative Sean Casten, are pushing for answers because the American people deserve transparency. And we also hear, like, as I said the other day, that the presidential library fund has dissolved. All the money that he's getting from these court cases that's supposed to be going to charity, well, that charity arm, the presidential library, has dissolved, and that money is going where? In Trump's pockets. Absolute corruption. Right, let's go back to talk to you guys in terms of drawing things to a close, but also answering some of your comments and talking through your super chats, etc., etc. Okay, so where were we? I think we got to here, which is Vigo. Objectively, everything points to a diplomatic solution in Iran being the best option for everyone. Agreed, except the USA and Israel. Yep, I think you're not wrong there, Vigo, as usual. Michael Gowdy, Ukraine could receive additional SAMP-T-NG air defense support from France, with a system expected to intercept ballistic threats, including Iskander MK and 23 and Kinjal missiles. I talked about this yesterday in Military Aid Live. If that was yesterday, it was a big one. If you haven't watched my Military Aid News Live, it is well worth watching it. Watch it on 2x speed because it's a long one. So much data in there. And I had a whole section on the SAMP-T-NG as well, next generation anti-ballistic missiles from France and Italy, the Eurosam company. Raymond says, Putin is allied with Iran and Trump is allied with Putin. At some point, a contradiction was evident. Yeah, I mean, there was always going to be a bit of an issue with that tangled web of alliances. Bobazula, JP's new microphone fund. Thanks. I don't need a new microphone. I will get some stickers though. Nice one. Thank you for that. In fact, I could design some stickers and get them off myself through Redbubble. Because I do, for those, not that I'm spamming you, but just if you do like any of this, like apparel, like ATP Geopolitics, Ukraine, Stay Informed, all that kind of stuff. This is for sale. It's all linked in the description below. There are mugs, there are mouse mats, there are all sorts of, you can get, because basically you had the design, they whack it on anything. Yeah, you can go and knock yourself out there if that is something that floats your boat. But I could do some stickers. I've got some NATO stickers for our NATO badges. I could do some stickers and go on the back of here. Yeah, anyway, that's irrelevant. The pirates, well, it's not, it's what you super chatted, so thank you very much, Babazilla. Please hit the like, subscribe. Let's get to 100,000 subscribers. Yes, that is my ultimate goal, and then I can die happy. I will have completed life, so please help me get there. Not that I will just cop it straight after that. I'll try and hold on a bit longer. No corruption in the USA. It's all in Ukraine, apparently. That is the claim, isn't it, Pirate? Yeah, Ukraine are the ones that are corrupt. Yeah, I think lobbying is legalized corruption. So any nation that has lobbying is already accepting legalized corruption. Just not, I know every nation has it to different amounts, you know, being taken out to dinner as a politician, all that kind of stuff. It's part of it. Just Not Good says someone needs a 3D print a medal. 1, the Order of Lenin, 2, the Hero of the Soviet Union, and 3, the Order of Victory, and send them to Trump. Yes, he should have received all of those, and he'll love them. He'll put them on himself like he did the FIFA Peace Prize medal. Thanks, Just Not Good. Really appreciate that. Benny Pie. Oh yeah, we've done that poll, which is broadly the same kind of numbers as when I last looked. So that's good stuff there. Thank you, Benny. Board of Peas, or Board of Peace as well. All of the above. Vigo, poll, a combination of at first, but diplomacy in the end. I mean, it will have to be diplomacy in the end. Just a few more comments. Robert L says maybe Trump might make Hungary the 51st state, would sort out a lot of problems. Oh, I don't know. I just bring on the election there. That's all I can say. Julian Rossiter with a super chat. Thank you very much. The SNL intro about gas prices last week, linking Iran, e-files, etc., was spot on. It was brilliant. I've watched that, Julian. It is absolutely brilliant. And the Tucker Carlson impression was also very good that I watched on SNL. But that cold open on SNL at the gas station, at the petrol station, is really good, with Pete Hegseth getting out the car, loads of beer cans, and then just whenever, what's his thingy, Jost, what's his name? The guy that does Pete Hegseth is brilliant. He's brilliant at Pete Hegseth. And actually, the Donald Trump is brilliant on SNL, the new one, because it used to be old. What's his face? Anyway, one of the brothers, you know, the brothers, guy that was making a film, got into trouble, someone died on set. Alec Baldwin. We've gone through Karen Spennock's super chat, so thank you, Karen. It's really kind. 123 Zabong. Alienate everyone, pick a fight with the toughest kid there, and then shame the bystanders for their silence. Not sure what that's with reference to. But it sounds pretty Trumpian. Pirate says, I have lived in the US for over 4 years, but as long as Trump is president, I can't travel there. I had lived there previously. I cannot travel there, not that I will. I post cartoons of Trump every day on my Facebook for the happiness of my fellow Norwegians. Yeah, you might be in trouble. They're checking your for the visa. They check out your social media presence. John Cromwell, hey John, didn't Trump refer to dead US vets as suckers and losers? Yep. Now he wants them in his ads. Yep. All that. Very good point there. Right, just a couple more that I have time for. The pirate, should Europe be afraid of Palantir? Yes, I think there is a bit of, there have been a few warnings about Palantir. Greg Terry, I watch JP at halftime speed because I love him so much. People, when you, as I'm sure many of you do, I listen to so many channels on 1.5, 1.75 is my usual speed, two times speed for a lot of them. But then when I have to listen to me the live, like now, like you listen to me, if you listen to me at 1.5 times speed and then you listen to me live, I probably sound drunk or ill. That's how I feel when I listen to people at normal speed. Greg Terry, he loves me being really, really slow. Okay. Violet Activist Art says Carney gave fabulous speeches here in Australia recently regarding the power of middle powers, unity and partnering with Australia due to shared democratic values. Was quite the tonic. Yes, I did hear snippets of some of them. I forgot he went to Australia. So yes. I don't know what, there's lots of talks about legends of the multiverse, but I think there should be 3D printing of those medals. Yeah, but I agree with you, Benny Pie. Definitely. Pirate again, love JP's lives. Not going to bother you for 14 days. Please do keep bothering me. Thank you, the Pirate. You are absolutely fantastic as a supporter of the channel. Right. Okay. Thank you very much to everyone. Now, what I'm going to say is please pop along to atpgeo.com/donate. because we are running a new campaign, which is with Frontline Kit. I think we're going to get an update down at the bottom of the screen for how much has been raised. I think we've got a €12,000. Or we collected, yeah, there it is. So that's in hryvnias. I wonder if we can get that translated into euros. But that is one donation. So we've had one donation, I presume, at the moment. That's just started up today. I'll keep talking about that, but we'll try and get this changed so it's like in euros, and we can understand where our goal is and how far along to that we are. But thank you for Richard for sorting that out, and that's for Richard Woodruff's Frontline Kit, who do a fantastic job getting these drones to people who need them the most. Thanks to you guys. Thanks to Benny Pie, who's been curating the comments. Thanks to all of you mods out there, and I really appreciate all of your support. You guys are absolute legends, and take care, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Hopefully news will quieten down. I've got some book editing to do on the Exodus, and I'm not getting enough of that done at the moment because Trump keeps saying crazy things. Good to hear from you, Greg. Take care, everybody. I would have offered you on, Greg, but I've got to go and get to bed. So anyway, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.